Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar on how to work with the US DoD's Defense Innovation Unit. My name is Anu Sood, and I'm a Senior Marketing Consultant here at CCC. Now, before we get started, for those who don't know who CCC is, we are a Government of Canada Crown Corporation focused on helping Canadian businesses build successful commercial contracts with foreign, national, state, and municipal governments, as well as state-owned enterprises. Now, we offer several services, but one of our main services is helping Canadians partner with the US military. As the designated contracting authority for purchases from Canada, CCC maintains a very close relationship with various departments within the US DoD, including the Defense Innovation Unit, also known as the DIU. So that's the reason for today's webinar. Now, today's presenter is Scott Sumner, a technical project manager in the AI/ML portfolio at the DIU. Now, in addition to assisting with international vendor outreach, he's currently championing the Gig Eagle talent matching project for the Reserve and National Guard and the Data Center Predictive Maintenance project for the Defense Intelligence Agency. Now, in today's presentation, he's going to be providing more information about the DIU, technology areas of interest, different technology portfolios within the unit, and how to start working with the DIU. At the end of the presentation, Scott will provide a list of resources and answer your questions. So feel free to add your questions throughout the presentation to the Q&A section of the event. Now, if you can't see the Q&A section, feel free to add it to the chat, and my colleagues at CCC are going to help move it over to the Q&A section so we can guide Scott through the questions. Now, with that, I'd like to hand the presentation over to Scott.
Hello, everyone. I'm very glad to meet you, and I'm very glad that you're here to hear more about DIU. Everyone knows two things about the U.S. Department of Defense. One, it's the biggest customer in the world, and number two, it's notoriously difficult to work with. So that's why organizations like DIU exist. We play an interstitial role between the vendor community and the Department of Defense, trying to allow the DoD to move more at the speed of innovation and adopt commercial technologies quicker than they otherwise would. The traditional Department of Defense likes to build everything itself. And I think we all know in this competitive world that we're in now, where things are moving so quickly and the global constellation of issues changes daily, that just won't cut it anymore. So DIU attempts to make things go more quickly. There is no reason for the US Department of Defense to be building everything itself when there are already commercial companies driven by market forces producing a lot of the technical capabilities that the DoD would need, just like any other commercial customer. So that's why here in this mission statement, it says that we are designed to be a fast follower. The United States will be a fast follower where market forces are driving the commercialization of military relevant capabilities and will speed delivery to the US warfighter. So all this to say, we are looking for companies that are already in the business of supplying technologies that are dual purpose. Not only do they have relevance in the commercial marketplace, but they would have relevance to the US Department of Defense as well, so that the DoD can take advantage of what's already being done in the marketplace. There is no reason to start from scratch, file new, and say, we want to build this. Will you develop this? What we'd much rather do is take advantage of what companies are already doing, because markets are already driving them to be producing these technologies, and just be a fast follower at adopting those technologies for Department of Defense use. And so that's why we publish the kind of technologies that we're looking for, the kind of needs that the Department of Defense has. It's so that we can be aware of and be looking for companies that are already doing what is needed. So that is DIU's role, to be in this interstitial place between the vendor community, the tech vendor community, and the Department of Defense. So we say we are a fast-moving, as opposed to slow-moving, cross-DoD organization. We are not aligned with any of the traditional service branches, of which there are 6. We're not aligned with any of them. We work with any mission partner across the DoD that comes to us, focused exclusively on commercial companies to solve national problems. So accelerate, transform, strengthen down there in the bottom left. We want to make things go faster. We want to transform military capacity and capabilities, and strengthen our national security innovation base. Everything we do is meant to make our country more secure. Differentiators, unique project life cycle. I will get into this in a couple of slides where we talk about how we work differently and why working with DIU is different than working with the department directly. Joint force, like I said, we work with all the parties across the DoD, and broad and deep integration into key tech ecosystems. I work in DIU's Silicon Valley office here in Mountain View, California. We have 5 offices across the US, not only here in Mountain View, but Austin, Texas, Chicago, Illinois, Washington, DC, of course, and then Boston, Massachusetts. Why? Because that's where all the tech companies are located in the US. And we pride ourselves on maintaining relationships with them, building relationships with them, so that as needs come in from the department, we know exactly who to talk to because we already have relationships with them. So those are our differentiators. That's why we exist, and the niche that we hope to fill in this interstitial role between the vendor community and the department itself. Now, there's actually 3 kind of components of DIU. I work for the Core Defense Innovation Unit. So here on the upper right, this is where I sit. And we work on high TRL capabilities that are pretty much already in the production stage. Things that are already ready to go, things that are already market ready, dealing with not only the defense industrial base, but also non-traditional vendors. We are very much looking for startups and smaller companies that are innovative and have the latest technology, are not burdened by a lot of bureaucracy and inertia, and can move quickly to solve defense problems now, today, next week. But there are 2 other sister organizations under our umbrella. One is called NSIC, National Security Innovation Capital, and one is called NSIN, National Security Innovation Network. Both of these are under the DIU umbrella, but they tend to look at things that are a little bit earlier in the product lifecycle, concept stage, development stage, prototype stage. So just for you to know, there are sister organizations within DIU that focus a little bit earlier in the product lifecycle. What I will focus on today is where I work, the Core Defense Innovation Unit, where we focus on what is ready to go right now. But in the question time or maybe afterward, I can always supply a little bit of information about our sister organizations. But today I will focus on our Core Defense Innovation Unit, those solutions that are most ready to solve defense-related problems right now. In focusing on commercial companies, why? Well, this slide makes it pretty clear. The traditional vendors, the traditional defense capability vendors, Lockheed, Raytheon, Boeing, Northrop, General Dynamics, they are being far outspent these days by tech companies, Amazon, Alphabet, Microsoft, Apple, Meta, for example, more than 20 to 1 in terms of how much they invest in R&D. So these are the companies where the chances are the greatest of there being a commercial solution readily available that we can take advantage of. And just to say as well, these are the top tech companies, but we're really looking for any sized company that has an innovative solution that could be offered to the DoD and the DoD could take advantage of. The 2 projects that I am managing right now that Anu mentioned at the beginning, awards for those projects both went to non-traditional startup size vendors that are doing awesome things for the DoD. So those are the kinds of organizations that we are looking for: small, nimble, providing very customer-ready, department-ready, market-ready solutions for the DoD. Now at DIU, we are focused on 6 technology areas. We have 6 portfolios, we call them. I work in AI/ML, so taking advantage of machine learning and AI solutions. AI is a pretty buzzy technology these days. So I think you're probably fairly aware of what we would be doing in the AI/ML portfolio. Autonomy is all about drones and autonomous vehicles. Of course, This is a technology that has matured quite a bit in recent years. There are also ready-made venues where they are very much in use. Ukraine, for example, tons going on via autonomy. Cyber and telecommunications, also very much at the fore. Security, networks, remote usage, out in the battlefield. How can we keep our communications secure and get the information to warfighters that they will need? Energy is our newest portfolio, a couple years old, very much focused on battery technologies, installation technologies to make power available in all kinds of scenarios, as well as powering things like guided vehicles, automated Gaia vehicles, underwater, out in space, all that kind of thing. Human systems is all about wearable technologies, things that the warfighter might wear to better equip themselves for their tasks in the battlefield. And then space is a more traditional portfolio, rockets and satellites, as you can imagine. We do execute projects that don't fall in one of these traditional 6 portfolios, but for the most part, the mission partners that come to us and the vendors that we deal with deal in these 6 technology focus areas. Now, how do we work? This is the most important slide and the one that I will spend the most time on today. If you walk away with nothing else, you need to walk away with the contents of this slide. This describes how DIU works and how what we do is different than dealing with the Department of Defense directly. Things are meant to go more quickly. Things are meant to look more like a commercial enterprise rather than dealing with this huge behemoth called the Department of Defense. This is meant to look a whole lot more like a regular commercial customer for a commercial company. So we have what we call our CSO process, commercial solutions opening, and that's what you as vendors would see. But before we ever get there, we spend some time in what we call problem curation and diligence. This is where we deal with mission partners, come to us and say, I have money and I have a problem to solve. I think there might be a commercial solution available. Rather than develop something myself, will you help me find a commercial vendor that can meet my needs? So we spend time talking with the mission partner about what is the real problem? What are you really looking for? What would success look like? If you found a vendor that solved your problem, what would it look like? What would they do? How would your world look different if we found a solution for you? And this can take some time, depending upon how much the mission partner has thought about the work at hand. Some mission partners come to us and they have thought this through very carefully. They know exactly what they're looking for. Other mission partners come to us and say, well, I think it needs to be blue. And we say, well, that's a far cry from really distilling out what you're really after. And so we spend time working with them to figure out what they're really looking for. And this can take a number of months. But once we go public and once the vendor community knows what we're looking for, then things are meant to move quickly. So this is an invest up front, think first, then do, really to your benefit. Now, I want to also say just a comment about this. It says no requirements here. What we mean by that is that we don't work with a mission partner to develop a 5,000-page RFP. We work with them to come up with a general problem statement that would resonate with a number of vendors. We don't want to be so specific that there's only one company or maybe 0 companies in the world that could help. We want a variety of companies to say, yeah, I think I could help with that. And so when we start our CSO process, when we do our phase 1, what we do is we make a public solicitation. The Department of Defense is looking for this. And what form does it take? It takes the form of a section on our public website where anybody can go see what is DIU looking for. And it will say, like I said, the DoD is looking for this. It will be about a page or a page and a half long. That is it. And it will describe in general terms what we are looking for. Now, by this point, we are already pretty sure that a vendor community exists that can help solve this problem, because in our due diligence phase, before we ever went public, we we're beating the bushes a little bit to see, is there a commercial market for this? Are there vendors that are already working on this? If not, then we might go back to the mission partner and say, you know, even if we make a public solicitation, there's probably not much help out there. That's a very rare case. What usually happens is we go back to the mission partner and say, we've been having introductory conversations for weeks. We've got tons of companies that would be interested in helping you. So that when we make the public solicitation, we should get a pretty robust response. You can see here 5 to 100 companies. That's just a general kind of rule of thumb. We are not in the business of gathering as many responses as possible to a public solicitation. If we get 500, okay, but that means we have to go through all 500, evaluate each one against very specific criteria, everything else. What we would much rather is a number more like 40 or 50 of very qualified vendors that are very much in tune, very in the center of the target to provide the solution for this mission partner. I also want to say that our solution solicitations are allowed for about 10 business days, only 2 weeks. And there's a reason for that. We are not, I mean, of course, we will accept solicitations, responses that say, we will develop this, we will, you know, prototype that. Okay, but what we're really after are companies that say, this is our bread and butter, we do this every day, this is our core business. We already have reference companies that have deployed our commercial solution. So in 10 business days, we're not looking for any vendors to go off and craft it from scratch. We're looking for vendors that say, this is what I already do, I can do it for you as well. And so that's why our solicitations are only up a relatively short period. We're not looking for smart people in a garage that can craft it from scratch. We're looking for companies that are already doing it as part of their daily business. So then with all of our solicitations, we sit down, we DIU with the mission partner. We set up a team of technical experts, program managers like myself, and similar parties from the mission partner to evaluate the proposals. We pass them around, we read them, we have meetings where we talk about, oh yeah, I know that company, they can do this, or I've never heard of them before. Let's hit their website and see what kind of references they have. We limit your responses, they're rather brief. You can supply 5 written pages or 15 slides. That's it. So again, we're looking for companies that are already doing what is needed, but we sit down, we evaluate them all. There are criteria, set criteria for this process that we evaluate every vendor on. Is the solution relevant to the solicitation that we made, or did someone just send in their marketing deck and it's completely unrelated? Is it a viable business? Does this company have a track record of doing things like this in the marketplace? Is this innovative? Is this something that the Department of Defense doesn't already have the capability of doing, et cetera, et cetera? And we evaluate each submission on all of these criteria to make the best choice. For phase 2, we down select from all the solicitations that we get back, all the responses that we get, we down select and identify a number of parties that we want to come in to pitch to us. So over here it says 5 to 20. Sure, it's usually more like 8 to 10. During COVID, we had to do these all virtually, which was a challenge. But now that we're back to more business as normal, we normally have people come to one of our offices. You are let know weeks in advance. These are the slots that are open. Please pick one of these slots to come to a DIU office. We will give you an hour or so to present your solution. You will present exactly what it is your solution can do. We might have given you, I don't know, a data file or a scenario or something to respond specifically to on behalf of the mission partner. We would expect certain information about that. There would be Q&A with us and the mission partner. And after this hour and a half, you would walk away with a much better understanding of what the mission partner really wants, and we would walk away with a much better understanding of what your solution actually is and what your company can do. At the end of that, we go into phase 3, where we actually select, us and the mission partner, select the awardees and negotiate an agreement. So from the 5 to 20, or more like 8 to 10, that come into pitch, we will down select again and choose 1 or 2, maybe 3 parties to prototype the solution. Now, everyone expects that even though the solution is in commercial use already, that there might be some configurations that need to change or some slight customizations that need to be accomplished for the purposes of DoD deployment, which is fine. If your solution is 80% of what we need, perfect. If it's 50%, okay, we might need to talk a little bit more. But that's the goal, that customizations are okay, configurations okay, totally. But us, in conjunction with the partner and based on the funding that's available, we will down select once again to the companies that are actually going to be given a prototype award. And you will be notified, and you will be given a package from DIU. It will be a request for proposal. Please send in a more formal proposal, including prototype pricing, rough production pricing, timeframes, other things that describe your solution, and then we will actually execute a prototype contract. Now, the timing of all this is important too. From the time our solicitation closes until the time we make an award, we try to make it happen quite quickly, 60 to 90 days. Now, that's somewhat aspirational. We run a little bit over that sometimes, 100, 110, but that's the goal. From the time you make your submission to DIU until the time you know that you are awarded a prototype contract or not, 60 to 90 days. And those of you that have worked with DoD before, you should know that that is far and above normal DoD speed. If you are given a prototype award, you will actually execute a prototype project. Most of these prototypes last between 12 and 24 months. Most software projects are more toward the 12-month side, more hardware projects are more toward the 24-month side. But the goal is that during this period, you prove that your solution actually works for the Department of Defense, and the configurations and customizations that were made are acceptable. There might be some back and forth. Oh, can you put this over here? Can you make this red, kind of thing? But all of that is meant to take your off-the-shelf commercial solution and prove that it actually does work for the Department of Defense. All of this work is paid. These prototype awards that we make are funded by real money from real mission partners at the DoD. The contract that you would sign would look very much like a normal commercial contract. Traditional DoD contracts are what are called FAR contracts, Federal Acquisition Regulation contracts. The awards that we make at DIU are called OTAs, Other Transaction Authority, where things are simpler and meant to go quicker. We include protections for your IP. The Department of Defense is not interested in knowing your IP and stealing the bread and butter of your business. The contract would say that you would maintain all of that. What we often start with are what called government purpose rights, GPR, where we would own any data that would go in, we would own any output that would come out, but all your algorithms, all your traditional IP that you own as a company would stay in your ownership. Of course, the goal, when this is all over, is to transition. We are not in the business at DIU of just doing sexy prototypes because they're fun. The goal is to get this technology, whatever it is, into the hands of the mission partner. So when it's all over, DIU's last task is to help broker a production contract between the vendor, whose capabilities are now known, and the mission partner. So it's at that point that we step back and say, okay, you guys know each other now, you know everything that works. DIU will help get the contract in motion, but a new award that you would sign, the production contract that you would sign, would be with the mission partner directly. Now, one other thing to note here, we have written here no recompete. If you've worked with the Department of Defense before, or maybe you've done a prototype directly with the DoD before, and you've performed very well, and then it comes time to transition to production, and they say, oh, well, we'll have to recompete this again. No. If you are involved in a DIU commercial solutions opening, and you are awarded the prototype contract because you won the competition at the beginning, if your solution meets the expectations of the mission partner, then we don't have to recompete. We did the competition up front, you won up front, your solution is acceptable to the DoD, you can go directly to signing a production contract. And you don't have to recompete at all. So once again, this is the most important slide for today. I've gone through it carefully to make you understand how working with DIU would be different. This is our special sauce. This is how DIU executes its interstitial role between vendors and mission partners at the DoD. So if you have questions about this, please write them down. I'm happy to answer them later. But once again, this is the most important slide of this deck, and this is what you have to walk away with a clear understanding of. So transitions, like I said, we are not in the business of just doing prototypes. We are in the business of doing transitions. This slide is about a year old now, but it documents that since its inception in fiscal 2016, DIU was accomplishing about a 47% transition rate from its prototypes into production. So prototypes successfully completed and resulted in a production contract with budget in place to field a solution in an operational environment. If you've worked with a department before, you know the normal transition rate is much, much, much lower than this. So this is where all the upfront work that DIU does in the problem curation and diligence comes to the fore. That is what we have to thank for this high transition rate, is because we do so much homework upfront about the problem and what would success look like, and are there vendors out there that can help, and we run our competition. This is the fruit that it bears, is these successful transitions into the Department of Defense. So outsized impact, this again is about a year old, this needs to be updated. So 95 ongoing, 57 completed projects, $30 billion in private investments. Here is an important data point for you, 125 first-time DoD vendors. So these are all the guys that were in the left tower of that slide a few ago about all the investment, where we are not targeting the traditional Department of Defense contractors. Of course, they can respond to a solicitation like anybody else, but first-time vendors are what we're really after. And oh, by the way, non-traditional vendors. These are the startups, the smaller companies, the ones that would otherwise never be on the radar of the Department of Defense. But this is where, once again, our public solicitations bear fruit. We are very excited to work with vendors that are not traditional vendors. 60 to 90 days, 47%, 52 new projects started in fiscal 22. Our vendor submissions were up 47% during that fiscal year. 360 prototype contracts awarded and 1.2 billion in funds obligated. So this is the fruit that DIU bears by working differently than with the traditional Department of Defense. So we obviously do not focus exclusively on US vendors. And as you can see here, Canada is already represented as a vendor community that we are already working with. Of course, we want to work with more of you guys. That's why you're here. That's why I'm here. And there are others as well. You do not have to have a US entity to respond to a DIU solicitation. Depending upon the requirements of the mission partner, you may or may not have to have a US entity. Some will say, I want US citizens working on my project. And there may be other restrictions as well. That's mission partner specific. But as you can see, there are many countries that have already participated and been awarded prototype contracts by DIU. We are very much looking for best in class around the world, not just in the United States. We don't kid ourselves that the US vendor community is the only community that can do this. If you look at so many vendors, not only in Canada, but Europe, Australia, and other places as well, there are world-class organizations out there that we want to be taking advantage of. And that's why I do DIU 101 sessions like this to educate a vendor community about how easy or easier it is to work with DIU so that we can take advantage of your technology and get you guys in here to help out with the problems that are at hand. So examples of capabilities today, these are all projects that have been completed and transitioned to a production contract with the mission partner as a result of a DIU prototype. So small drones, like I said, our autonomy portfolio is all about drones, and there are tons being deployed now. Critical supply delivery, this can be a drone oriented as well, unmanned underwater vehicles. Illness diagnostics, this is more in our human systems portfolio. During COVID, we did a project called RATE that was wristbands and rings that were monitoring baseline health parameters and able to identify COVID 3 to 4 days before the onset of symptoms. And there are many more projects like that. Unmanned maritime service, surface vessels, launch as a service from our space portfolio, cyber vulnerability remediation from our cyber portfolio, commercial satellite imagery from our space portfolio. Like I said, there's tons of this being done in Ukraine right now. Space imagery combined with cyber, combined with drones, and then CAUAS is aircraft defense systems. So this is just a small smattering of the kinds of things that have transitioned to production, those 52 projects over the course of time with DIU. Now, here's another layer of the onion about the kind of technologies that DIU is looking for. I described to you our 6 portfolios. They're all represented here. But this is the next layer of the onion, 5 or 6 bullets for each portfolio about the kinds of technologies that we think are most relevant for the Department of Defense. Now, I want to make a point here. DIU does not decide what to invest in. We don't have our own budget where we say we have X billion dollars to invest in this. That could come someday, but at the moment, that's not the case. We respond to the demand signal that is brought to us by other mission partners around the Department of Defense. So myself in artificial intelligence, for example, foundation models, of course, generative AI, all the buzz in the last year, ChatGPT and everything else, modeling and simulation, all kinds of hypothetical situations to be checking out, training and inference hardware, operational decision support, anomaly detection and baselining, like I described with the rate program and the wristwatches and rings. The predictive maintenance project that I'm doing right now is all about deploying artificial intelligence in a data center, baselining all of the networking components' behavior, so that rather than a component failing before someone does something about it, the AI layer can set dynamic thresholds and notify someone, hey, the health of this component is starting to deteriorate, someone better take a look, and you can swap out that router before it fails in the middle of the night. And then here it is for all the other portfolios as well. This is a slide that you need to go over carefully as well. If you are a vendor that is dealing in one of these areas, chances are a DIU solicitation would be coming at some point because a mission partner would express need in one of these areas. Once again, if you are not in any of these areas, not to fear. A solicitation may be coming along, at some point anyway. And even if you're only kind of in one of these areas, you can always respond to a solicitation and say, I don't have the whole solution, but I have at least part of it. You can partner up with other parties and do a joint submission, or you can openly admit when you make your submission, I only have 20% of the solution, or I have 80%. And DIU, because we read all of the responses that come in, we can contact you and say, are you open to being matched with this other party, and then have you meet up with them and provide a joint solution to the DoD. So all that is possible. Now, there are resources that are available, and I will just go over the URLs here that are available on our website, things that you can use to help educate you how to work with us. Our website, diu.mil, has quite a bit of information in general. I've kind of given you the lay of the land in the last half hour, but a lot of it is there for you to read. Open solicitations, this is where you would go to this URL, and you can see the solicitations that are currently open at DIU. Of course, they come and go, and they're only there for 2 weeks at a time. But you can sign up to get a feed. Anytime a new solicitation is posted at DIU, you can get an email that includes the contents of that solicitation. So you don't have to keep checking, you can sign up, and then you can be notified when a new solicitation is there for your review. We have thousands of people on this feed, and all of them are watching for, is there something relevant for me? Is there something relevant for me? And that's an easy way to stay apprised. You can also sign up for updates. We have a newsletter that we send out that's more general information about DIU, things about more technology trends and things like that you would see would be in that newsletter as well. And that is the same kind of thing, just an easy snap. Finally, there are some video resources available on our website. This URL, How to Work with DIU. There are multiple helpful short videos. There's kind of an animated video that talks about the rationale for DIU and what we do, kind of what I've given you today. There are videos that walk you through how to prepare your submission, what to expect in a pitch if you are invited to pitch, what to expect when we request a proposal from you. All those are in bite-sized chunks that are there. There is also a longer video. It's still helpful, but it's longer. It's on YouTube. I think it's, I don't know, 30 or 45 minutes, where some of my colleagues talk in greater detail about how to go about working with us. The bite-sized videos are a little bit more to the point and in smaller chunks, and more targeted to answer specific questions. The long-form video is there to kind of tell the story, but the content is very much the same. I would point you to both. If you are interested in working with DIU, do the bite-sized ones, watch the long one too. They go over the same material, but are packaged a little bit differently. But so I would commend all of those to you. Anu, would you like to handle this before we open for questions?
Absolutely. So the CCC has also made some resources available for Canadian businesses. We have this page on our website, and we'll send the URL out later. It basically summarizes a lot of the programs, innovation programs that are available through the DoD. And it's worth looking through them because there are different types of programs depending on where you're at in your development program, as well as the particular area of technology. So we will include this page along with all the other links that Scott provided, so you can browse through and look to see how you would like to engage with the DoD. So Scott, I will start with some of the questions that have come in. So one of the first questions that came in is, what is the best way for a small Canadian company to engage in the DIU replicator program?
A lot of people have been asking about that. Replicator is a brand new thing that people are still learning about. Most of it is being handled via our Ensign sister organization. I am happy to help people get in touch with the appropriate people here. I don't know if there is a public way of raising your hand yet, since Replicator is so new. There are people here within DIU, and particularly our Ensign sister organization, that are handling that. And I would be happy to hook people up with those parties. To my knowledge, there is no public way to click on a link and raise your hand yet, just because it's so new. So that's something that I think would require a little personal follow-up, which I am happy to do. And maybe Anu, maybe you can collect people who want to know more, or you can reach out to people, can reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I can find a way to get you in touch with the appropriate party. I wish there was an easy way to just click on a link and say, yep, I want to know more, but I don't think there is yet, just because Replicator is so new.
Yes, and this answers some of the other questions that came in. If you're not sure on how to work with the DoD, CCC is also available as a resource. We have a number of export advisors that can take your information and then direct you to the right person or group that can assist you in Canada and US. So for those who are asking, like, how do you start working with the DIU or the DoD in general, just send us a request through the Contact Us page on our website. So the next question is, does the DIU work with the USCG as well? To the US Coast Guard?
Yes, yeah. There are 6 service branches: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Space Force, and Coast Guard. We work with all of them.
Very good. The next question is there a push mechanism to introduce potential solutions, or only a pull to respond to a problem the internal partner knows they have?
Yeah, this is where DIU, we try to be fairly careful about the boundaries that we set. We are obviously interested in knowing new technologies that are out there. Just like Anu was saying, you can always make an inquiry to their website. On the DIU website, there's a way to submit an inquiry as well. And you could always say, I've got a solution related to this. Does anybody want to talk to me? And that would be passed around DIU. If it's something innovative that we haven't heard a whole lot about, you would probably be contacted by someone from our commercial engagement team, who would say, hey, we don't know much about you, but I understand you submitted a query to our website. Yeah, I'd love to hear more. So that is always a possibility. But that said, DIU is not a business development organization for vendors. We don't try to be the first point of contact that you make, and then we try to sell you to mission partners. We have found that we are much more successful responding to a demand signal that the mission partner expresses to us. So we kind of try to thread the needle. If you have an innovative solution and you don't see any solicitations out there, but you think we ought to know about you, by all means, send in an inquiry. Someone will get back to you, or if we're connected on LinkedIn, send me a message, whatever. There are ways to raise your hand and get on our radar screen. If there is no immediate need for your solution, that's fine. Our commercial engagement team will file it away for the day when a solicitation would, or an inquiry would come in from a mission partner that you might be suitable for. But like I said, we try to be careful about what's inside our box and what is outside of our box. We don't serve as a business development arm for vendors.
Okay, so it looks like you answered the next question, which was, does there have to be a solicitation from DoD before DIU will engage with SMEs or innovators?
No, for the purposes of us knowing about you, and like I said at the beginning, we pride ourselves in knowing about everything that's out there. If you think you have something that you feel we should know about, send in an inquiry. It will probably go to the commercial engagement lead for the most relevant portfolio. They would reach out to you and say, hey, haven't heard about you before, but happy to talk. Tell us what you got. So that would be one way to do it. DIU will not sign a contract with anyone until there is a public solicitation and your solution is known to have won the down select process on the competition and is worthy of a prototype award. So we don't make SIBR awards and other things like that. The awards that we make are specific to a mission partner's stated problem. But just knowing about you, and particularly if you fall in one of our portfolio areas, or you look on the key technology slide and say, hey, I'm involved in this area, then you should be on our radar and making an inquiry and just having DIU reach back to you and say, we'd like to know a little bit more. That's totally fair game.
Very good. The next question is, which consortia are associated with the OTAs? Do we need to belong to one or more?
Good question. Consortia is one way to be involved in an OTA, but by no means the only way. We do direct OTA awards to specific vendors. Both of the projects that I am running right now are with non-traditional vendors, startup-sized companies that had never worked with the Department of Defense before. The award went directly to them. So it does not have to be a consortium. Sometimes a small startup will decide they don't want to, or well, I guess in their opinion, they say, well, we're not smart enough to know what we don't know. We will go via an integrator. And so sometimes a response to a solicitation will come in via an integrator, and they will say, we are submitting on behalf of this small startup vendor, and then the relationship is with us and the integrator on behalf of the startup. So sometimes some companies will be a little skittish for whatever reason and say, you know what, we're not going to do this directly. We will go via an integrator, and we'll get the response from the integrator themselves. So that's another way to mitigate risk, if that's something that you're concerned about, to put yourself in the hands of an integrator who maybe in your opinion knows the Department of Defense better. Of course, they're going to take their cut somehow, of the funding that's provided, but that would be another way to do it.
Okay. Very good. I'm going to make this a general question, but what kind of certifications do Canadian businesses need to have in order to work with the DIU?
There are no certifications required to work with us. Depending on the mission partner, there could be certifications that your solution would require to be suitable for their use. So for example, depending upon the kind of data that might be involved, unclassed, classified, top secret, it could be that because of the data that will be involved, the kind of information that will be housed, that your solution would need to achieve a certain level of certification from a DoD authority. Those of you in the know all about IL levels, impact level, 2, 3, 4, all the way up through 6. One of my projects right now, we need to have IL4 because personal data is involved from individual people. That's PII. There might be controlled unclassified information, CUI, involved as well, and that requires IL4. So that's a case where no certification was required to respond to our solicitation. The partner was chosen on the understanding that they would pursue IL4 for their solution as part of the prototype, but they didn't have to have it to get the award. In other cases, a mission partner might say, I want to see FedRAMP moderate or FedRAMP high, and the solicitation might say, vendor must be willing to pursue this certification. So you would know in advance what the expectation was by the time you transition to production. But often during the prototype phase, the certification isn't required to get the prototype award. Often we work with you and we help sponsor you to get that certification in the course of the prototype so that by the time you're ready to transition to production, you have it.
Very good. The next question is, if a selected solution was an application or a software, does the DIU fast track authority to operate, so an ATO, or would this happen after the branch that requires it?
Yeah, this is where DIU's role, once again, is interstitial, but we're not the end customer. So as your software comes in the building, there are two major hoops to jump through. One is called IATT, Interim Authorization to Test. And often it depends on how widespread your solution is going to be, how many people are going to be able to see and touch it, but very often an IATT will be required to release your solution for department use. And then ATO is what you need to transition to production. You're IATT certified during the prototype phase, and then before you transition to production, you have to have your ATO. Now, back to the question, can DIU award your ATO? Not really, except for special circumstances. We can sponsor you for the ATO. We can sponsor you for the IATT, for that matter, but normally those will come from the mission partner themselves. Unless DIU was actually going to be the recipient of your software, unless you were going to be deployed on DIU infrastructure, which would be very rare, you would have to meet the mission partners' criteria for IATT and ATO. If your software is going to go on-prem with them, it's not our data center, it's theirs. And so they're going to dictate how high the bar is. If your solution is a cloud solution, that would be an AWS GovCloud, for example, then it wouldn't as much be about the security of the installation. It would be the kind of data that it houses and what certification level does it need to reach because of what is housed there. But Google and other cloud providers have done their homework well. They know exactly how high the bar is for a DoD software installation, and they cover that base very well. So if you're a cloud solution, then it's much more about what is the kind of information that's being housed. If it's an on-prem solution, then you would have to expect that your software would go through Prisma scans and other things to search for vulnerabilities and things like that, that you would have to meet before an on-prem installation would be contemplated. But through all of this, DIU could sponsor you, but we would very most likely not be the end organization. We would help walk you through the process and sponsor you with the mission partner, but the real criteria that you would need to meet would be the mission partners, not DIUs.
Very good. What is your relation to projects that may be similar at DARPA? Is it possible that these overlap?
It is possible that they would overlap. Like I said, DIU tends to operate toward the higher TRLs, so the stuff that's more commercially already available. DARPA is obviously a sister organization within the DoD, but they tend to focus more on research and development and things like that. Often, if someone comes to DIU and says, we can develop this, often we will say, please call DARPA or let us hand you off to DARPA. They will help you understand what would be the most beneficial development for you to undertake. So in that sense, DARPA tends to be just a little bit earlier in the sequence, a little bit earlier in the life cycle. We work with them. Sometimes there's a handoff from DARPA. Oh, we've been working with a company that has been developing this thing, but now it's kind of commercially viable. They've just come out of stealth mode. They're out in the commercial marketplace now. They're just building their customer base, but there is their solution is very much dual use, and you should be aware of these guys. And so sometimes the handoff would go that way. But if someone would come to us and say, we're all very excited about developing this thing, it's research that we think would be very relevant, it's those kind of circumstances where they would say, okay, let us hand you off to our friends at DARPA, because we don't fund development, and we're for the most part not looking for solutions to be developed. We're looking for ones that are already developed and commercially viable.
Okay. There's a lot more questions coming in, so I will do my best to sort through them. One of the questions is, what resources does the DIU leverage to validate that there is an active market for the need that a mission partner has? So do you do vendor interviews, Gartner analysis? What resources do you use?
Our commercial engagement team that I mentioned before, and there's a team for each portfolio. They are very actively out in the marketplace all the time. That is their bread and butter. They read reports. They hold introductory conversations with companies. They develop market maps for individual projects. They do all that kind of stuff and beat the bushes and spend time going up and down the freeway talking to companies. That's part of the rationale for why we're located where we are in the 5 technology hotspots across the US, is so that we can do that very thing. And very often, if a query comes in, like I said, it'll be handed to the commercial engagement team lead, the CET lead for the most relevant portfolio. And the CET lead would reach out to the company and say, hey, can we do a demo? You want to come into our office? Can we do it virtually? Can you show me your platform? All of that is possible.
Very good. Yeah, so first, there's a number of questions that are technology specifics. You can either send a query through the DIU or through CCC, and between the two organizations, we will find the person who can answer your questions. Another question is,
I would be remiss if I tried to answer them myself, but I will say each of our portfolios has its own technical staff. So as submissions are coming in, they are vetted not only by business people, program managers like me, but also by our technical staff, who say, oh, this looks really solid as a technical solution, or oh no, these guys are blowing smoke. When you are invited in to pitch, our technical staff and the mission partners technical staff are sitting in and asking very pointed technical questions about your solution. We have tons of PhDs on staff, people from the military side, people from the commercial side, people that are university researchers who are very much aware and abreast of all the latest technologies, and they know how to poke and prod from a technical standpoint. So you're right, Anu, I cannot answer them, but rest assured, if you enter the process, there will be people here who will be able to ask those questions. And for purposes of this call, Anu, if you are able to collect them and send them, I can find the right people who would answer.
Perfect. We'll take care of that. I'm not sure if you know this one, but can you provide a brief description of the Blue UAS certification?
Oh boy, I am probably not the best person to answer that one.
Okay. Well, let's park it, and we will see if we can get more information to send along.
Okay. Yeah, it would not take me long to find it.
Okay. What happens if technology crosses multiple focal points? So drones, mesh networks, PQC, and secure comms. The person's asking, should they focus on one or multiple areas?
If the solution really does cross multiple areas, by all means, bring them all to the fore. Chances are a mission partner's needs would also be multifaceted in the sense that they want a drone that can communicate securely and have batteries that will last, and what have you. So we see that all the time, where a mission partner's needs and the submissions that come in cross portfolio boundaries. often one of the portfolios will take the lead and the others will supplement. Just organizationally, that's easier. But the technology experts from all the portfolios would be involved in evaluating the whole solution. So there would be no reason to only focus on a portion of your solution. If there is a solicitation that crosses all of them, my goodness, bring your combined strengths to the table. If there is a solicitation that would only cover a portion of your combined solution, by all means submit that, because it could be that you would be strong even in only that one regard. You'd have to see.
Very good. How much weight is placed on DoD or defense sponsor via contractor versus a direct defense sponsor? So, for example, general or NATO commissioned leaders.
You mean in terms of mission partners, the ones that DIU decides to work with, or?
Exactly.
Well, remember, there is no requirement for any DoD entity to use DIU. They can go directly to the marketplace themselves. We pride ourselves on all the things that I described earlier: faster, better, quicker, cheaper, whatever you want to call it. So it would be to their advantage to come to us, but there is no requirement that they do so. By the same token, if we work with a mission partner and decide either, first of all, there's no vendor community really working on this thing, or you guys haven't thought about this enough, we tried to work with you to distill your problem down to something that would be a market ready thing, and you guys just aren't up to it, we don't have to take on the mission partner either. So it's not really a prioritization of what kind of partner comes to us. It's more a prioritization of, is there a vendor community that can help? Do they really know what they're looking for? Can we help them? Can we serve as management consultants to tease this out of them and make it a market-ready thing that would make sense to vendors that could help? So it's much more that kind of thing. But no, we work with individual foreign governments. We have a prize challenge going with India right now. We have the service branches that come specifically to us. We have joint organizations that come to us and say, we're looking for a joint solution that ultimately will benefit all of the service branches, but we're a joint organization. Will you work with us? Yeah, sure. So one of my projects that I'm working on actually did not have a single mission partner that came to us. It was a direct congressional appropriation. So Congress funded it and said, you guys should build this. And the hope is that by the time we transition to production, that there will be mission partners that come out of the woodwork and say, hey, we're playing with the prototype, this thing is great. Of course, we want in for the ultimate deployment, but for the prototype itself, it was Congress that funded it, not a single mission partner. So yeah, we will not turn mission partners away. Come to us for which we think there is a commercial solution available and with whom we can distill their problem statement down to something that vendors could respond to. We are very eager to help in that regard.
Very good. I'm going to ask you one final question. So where's the line drawn between DIU and DevCom? And the person's asking, should they be trying to engage with both?
I would say the line is fuzzy. There may be a way to tease it out, but I'm not aware of a hard line between the two. I would say make contact with DIU. We will tell you if we don't think we can help you. And I can't speak for DevCom. I don't know what criteria they would use. But I'm very well apprised, as you've heard over the last hour, of what DIU thinks it can do. We are eager to help anyone who has a solution that could be harnessable by the DoD. So please make contact. We'll tell you if we don't think there's much for you here.
Okay, very good. All right.
I knew there's one more question that just came up that I think is it's probably more for you than for Scott. I just put it in the Q&A. Can you grab that one before we close it down?
Oh, sure. So the person is asking, what's the relationship between CCC and the Canadian Trade Commissioner for Defense and Security? We maintain a very close relationship with the Canadian Trade Commissioner as well as other Government of Canada partners. So we take a whole of government approach, to our work. And so if you submit an inquiry to CCC or through the Trade Commissioner, we will ensure that your question gets directed to the right organization. So with that, looking at the time, I'd like to thank everybody for your questions and Scott for all the answers. For those in the audience, we will send an email in the coming days with a link to the recording and the resources that Scott mentioned. We'll also summarize some of the important key points that was covered in today's webinar, so you have a record of it.